What is up, my brothers and sisters, my agents of respect? It's your boy TreJuanJohnson back with another episode of the No Disrespect But podcast. Before we get started, make sure you guys like and subscribe to the channel. Always feel free to comment. Just please make sure you keep those comments respectful. Just an example of the last episode, had a guy in there, big Ravens fan. He and I had a really cordial conversation. Some things he agreed with, some things he didn't, but it was just really cool to have that conversation of kind of what he thought about the NFL season, about his Ravens in particular. So always encourage you guys to, as you watch the show or even while you're watching the show, feel free to comment. I tend to try to do a good job of responding and just kind of starting those conversations. But also, if you're interested in supporting your favorite podcaster, yours truly, your boy's Cash App will be in the episode description. So make sure you guys look out for that. It's usually the last line because it's probably the least important right now, as far as I'm concerned. But appreciate the support either way. So I kind of said that over the past couple shows. Wanted to make sure I put out an episode just thinking about the college football season. Last year I did this. I think it was my first time doing it last year. There was a lot to talk about, right? Coach Saban had retired, so what was that going to look like? Texas and Oklahoma had joined the SEC. Washington, Oregon, USC. Um, who am I missing? UCLA. They had joined the Pac-12. I mean, they had joined the Big Ten. Utah, Colorado, Arizona, Arizona State. They all went to the Big 12. So a lot of um, just conference realignment, right? What Cal went from the Pac-12 to the ACC which is the Atlantic Coastal Conference, which is insane in itself. So it was just interesting. And I believe Arizona State, yes, well, of the four Power Four conferences, two conference champions were teams that had transferred in essentially, with Arizona State winning the Big 12 and Oregon winning the Big 10. Um, and of course, the season ended. It was our first 12 game college football playoff, a 12-team college football playoff, and Ohio State was able to squeak in, and they got hot at the right time, demolished some teams, and they ended up winning the national championship. And now we're going into year two of this 12-team playoff, and leading up to it, there's always already been discussion of a 16-team playoff. If you guys recall last year when I talked about the things that would happen and how we weren't going to get the parity that we thought we did, or it was going to result in really talented teams, like we saw with Ohio State being an 8 seed when we knew they were way better than an 8 seed. They just had a really bad year, but they were able to squeak in and they dominated. They got a favorable bracket. They dominated. They got to the national championship. They won that national championship. Um, and you kind of knew that this idea of parity or this idea of the Davids of the college football world getting into the college football playoff was a myth, and almost to the point where they were so focused on trying to get that in that you put an SMU in over in Alabama and they get killed. You put an Indiana in, they get killed. So it was almost like we tried it. We tried it really hard to get probably the Davids of the world in. And even still, a lot of those Davids were part of the Power Four conferences. Boise State was really the only one that they were the G5 champ, and they went in and made some noise. I really appreciate the game that they played. They fought to the end in the quarterfinal matchup because they also got a bye, which was kind of insane, but it was what it was. And I don't think it panned out. And it didn't pan out so much so that the Big Ten and the SEC just decided that, hey, you know what? We didn't like that. We should get more teams in, especially the SEC. And so now they're almost threatening to take away the games that we started getting. I mean, Texas went to Michigan last year. Michigan's going to Texas this year. Michigan, sorry. Yeah, Texas went to Michigan. Um, I believe Texas is going to Ohio State this year. I know Oklahoma has a big component as well this year. So Alabama, Wisconsin, Alabama, Florida State, Clemson, LSU, just these marquee matchups, right, against some powerhouse college football programs that one college football fans have been begging to have happen. We starting to get those. And then last year was one of those times where you saw teams get penalized for having those types of matchups. And yeah, I'll use Alabama as an example. Oh, well, they lost their conference games. And win your conference games and you get in. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. But when you look at what Indiana did, and they took out difficulty in their out of conference schedule, they didn't have that big of a or hard of a conference schedule, and they ended up sneaking in. The one team they ended up playing, Ohio State, throughout the year, killed them. So they got in, they were able to squeak by, and I think what you're going to see is you're going to see some more Big Ten teams do this because it worked for them, right? And I think you're going to see SEC teams do it. It's why play, a hard out of conference game if we can just play cupcakes all throughout it and then manipulate our conference schedule so to where we keep our big dogs away from each other so we can try to maybe stick, 5 or 6 teams in the college football playoff, especially if it moves to 16. Like some of these rules that they're saying and threatening to pretty much start their own thing if they don't get their way. This is everything I feel like folks like myself warned we would be involved in. And guess what? We're going to get 16. It's going to get voted in. We're going to play the 16. Then they're going to say, oh, 24 and then 32. And then shit, we're going to have college basketball size tournament, which by the way, college basketball is in talks to grow the tournament. So I don't know. We lost our place in collegiate athletics, especially when it comes to the FBS with football, and I guess kind of what they're trying to do with the NCAA basketball tournament. We just lost our way, but we are where we are. But anyways, all that to say, there was really a lot to talk about, a lot to really look forward to, and I don't think this episode is going to be as detailed as I was then. I kind of want to focus on, you know, some teams that I'm looking forward to watching. Um, and then I'm just going to predict my 12. I'm not going to predict the order, and I'll go with who I think that the Power Four conference champions will be, who I think the G5 champion will be, and then from there, who will be the other 7 teams that I think make the college football playoff, if that makes sense. And you know, some of it will be biased. Obviously, Bama. I'm gonna have Bama in there. Just news flash. Surprise, surprise. I'm gonna have Bama in there. But I think there's gonna be some teams that made it in last year that um, I don't believe are gonna make it in this year. And there's gonna be some teams that missed it last year that I think are gonna be really good this year and have an opportunity to make it. Um, and so I want to start with some teams I'm looking forward to, and on a good way and a bad way. Um, I would say this: I am really looking forward to seeing how Vanderbilt does. Coming off a really good season, obviously big win against the University of Alabama. Took the University of Texas to the wire, and they bring back a lot of their guys, including quarterback Diego Pavia, who I'm sure is on a mission to prove that last year wasn't a fluke, right? That Vanderbilt is starting to build themselves into a formidable team in the SEC, and they're going to have their opportunities. The SEC pretty much flipped last year's schedule, so they get an opportunity to go to Alabama. They get an opportunity to go to Austin to face Texas, which are going to be 2 big games for them. Obviously, they have an opportunity to play Tennessee as well, which is a rivalry game for them. And Tennessee was a college football playoff team. So I want to see how Vanderbilt bounces back. I would say this. I think they do make a bowl game, but I do not believe that they will be as good or get as many big wins against some of the opponents that they got won, and especially Alabama. Like I don't believe that they're going to be able to replicate that level of success and surprise, but I do believe they will be able to build upon what they're already doing and get an opportunity to play in a bowl game, which um, it doesn't always seem to matter as much anymore, right? With the football, with the playoff and everything. But um, I do believe that there's a world where programs that aren't really expected to contend for the playoffs have an opportunity to um, end the year with a positive, and a positive that helps their roster, right? Those kids feel like they had a great season, or ended the season well, right? But also help them with recruitment. Like, look, hey, we may not be those blue bloods yet, but we're building the framework, right? I don't know if Vanderbilt will ever get there, but shit, they got the money. Um, they got the donor base that if they poured some more money into Vanderbilt football, they could be uh, something, right? Um, Another team I'm looking forward to watching is Michigan. Um, Obviously had a really good end to the year. Um, Beat Ohio State for, I believe, what was the fifth year in a row. Um, and then in their bowl game, beat Alabama. That defense under Wink Martindale was just phenomenal, right? Towards the end of the year. I think I was listening to Joel Klatt, and I believe he said they allowed 23 points in their last 4 or 5 games, something like that. So, like, those guys started to get it. Now, yes, they lost two really impressive players on the defensive line, which includes Mason Graham, but the way Michigan recruits, I think they'll be right back at it. Um, as a collective, right? They got Bryce Underwood. He's probably going to be their starting quarterback as a true freshman, but not so sure. I think Keene is also Tommy Keene, I believe is his first name. Um, has an opportunity to be the starting quarterback, but I know he got hurt in the spring, so we'll see what that looks like. But I don't know. They were in a lot of close games last year, and almost games they should have won. And I would kind of say the same thing for USC as well, right? They were in a lot of games that maybe they should have won. But Michigan, I think they're out to prove something, right? I think they're out to prove that the last 3 or 4 years under Coach Harbaugh that culminated into a national championship, that wasn't a fluke, right? And I'm interested to see how they bounce back this year, and I think they will. Bounce back. I think they have a really good roster, and it's going to show. Sometimes you just have an off year. They didn't have an answer at quarterback, right? And quarterback is such an important position. We know this, right? But it's extremely important in college football. Like, when you don't have a quarterback, like if you don't have a guy, you don't have a quarterback. And when there's so much controversy around the position, and you're playing, you know, the carousel, right, with the quarterback position, it's so hard for your team to find rhythm, not just on the field, but from even a leadership and locker room standpoint. Who do we rally behind um, when it's a new guy every week, it seems? But I think Michigan has definitely figured it out, and looking forward to seeing them. Uh, Another team I'm looking forward to seeing is Arizona State. I want to see if they can follow up from their performance a year ago, right? Ended up, I think they were a two-loss team, right? But they ended up getting their way into the Big 12 championship game, and they won. And they put on a hell of a performance against Texas. I don't think many people thought that game was going to go to overtime, right? They thought Texas was going to roll in there and do what they do. I mean, even without the SEC tag, it's the freaking University of Texas, right? Like, you thought they were going to mow over Arizona State, who plays in the Big 12, which is not your granddaddy's Big 12. Hell, it ain't even your daddy's Big 12. Shit, it's not even your Big 12, because OU and Texas just left last year. So all new for the most part. A lot of Pac-12 teams, that including Arizona State, that transferred over to the Big 12. And you just didn't think they could hold a candle to Texas. And there were points in that game where I thought Arizona State was going to win, and probably should have won that game. So um, obviously, they lose Scatterbull, their star running back from a season ago, who was a Heisman finalist. But they bring back a really good core. Obviously, the quarterback, who I'm a big fan of, also bringing back their star wide receiver, who I believe missed that college football playoff game against Texas. Bringing a lot of those guys back. Sam Levitt, I believe, is the name of that quarterback. And so he's a guy that I have on my radar, just looking at the 2026 quarterback prospect. pool right now for my New Orleans Saints. So he's somebody I would love to have. I mean, not too many guys are running a 5-star in Rashida off to where he knew he couldn't win that competition. And so I'm expecting some big things from Levitt this year. And I want to see if Arizona State can replicate it. I think the Big 12 is going to be a lot better. I think Oklahoma State's getting better. I think Utah is getting a lot better. They were a team that were decimated by injuries a year ago, and arguably I think they were 1-5 in one possession games. They're 5-1. They're a two-loss team, right? Which I think probably would have put them um, as the Big 12 or in the Big 12 championship game, which I believe last year I predicted them to win it because, the Cam Rising was coming back, a very veteran quarterback at that time. Um, and I had seen what Utah had done in the Pac-12, and I just didn't think that there was a team that could be physical enough to beat them in the Big 12. And to be quite honest, I believe had they been healthy, they're probably your Big 12 champions. They're making noise in the college football playoff. And so I think that's certainly something that they think about as well. You have to be a fool not to think that that's something they've considered, right? And feel like, shoot, we got to get our guys healthy. We have an opportunity to win a conference championship and make it to the playoffs, especially with this expanded playoffs. Um, a team I'm also looking forward to, and probably for the wrong reasons, right, is maybe like an SMU. I would say SMU. They had a really good year last year, but they had one of the weakest schedules in the nation. And I'm not saying it's just because the school I work for is opening up against them, but it's true. If they want to use this as bulletin board material, so be it. But I just didn't think that they were that good of a team. Um, the ACC graced them with a really good schedule. They had some scares in the year, right? But um, nothing crazy. And I think the one time they played an actual legit team in Clemson, they were getting dog walked until Clemson decided to take their foot off the gas, which I think largely was in part because they knew if that score stood, SMU was not making it to the college football playoff, and that they were going to get replaced by either an Alabama or an Ole Miss. And I think the ACC made the call and said, hey, Clemson, you're going to win the conference championship. You're going to get a playoff spot. Uh, could you please relax? So um, I think that's what ended up happening with Clemson. And so um, they kind of took that foot off the gas, allowed SMU to get in, and SMU they just weren't ready. I believe they played Penn State. They just were not ready for that physicality, for that level of competition, and it showed. Not to say that with Alabama or an Ole Miss or even a South Carolina at the time who was coming on hot towards the end of the year. Uh, Not to say that they would have fared any better in Pennsylvania, that weather, that crowd, but you just kind of feel like historically speaking, they probably would have given a better performance, but it's neither here nor there. I do think SMU is probably going to fall off a little bit. Kevin Jennings is a phenomenal talent, could definitely be a Heisman candidate. Um, but I just don't see it this season. I think they're going to take a little bit of a step back. Um, I also wonder how the U is going to do. Cam Ward was such a godsend for them, just solidifying that quarterback position. Being as talented as he was, obviously he ended up becoming the number one overall pick in the NFL draft. How did they bounce back? How does that defense bounce back? You just felt like in games, Cam Ward had to be Superman every game just for him to have a chance. And it got to the point where, you know, he couldn't do it anymore. Uh, Obviously, losing to Syracuse late in the year, he just couldn't do it anymore. And that ultimately knocked him out of the college football playoff. So now getting Carson Beck, who's another seasoned guy, right, coming into that quarterback room, had a little bit of a down year by his standards, I'd say, at the University of Georgia. Although I do think he did a lot with a little. When you look at that roster that UGA had from a skill player position, I just don't think um, I don't think they were able to fill the void of what they lost in the 2024 NFL draft, thinking about Lad McConkey, thinking about Brock Bowers. I just think they were able to fill that void, and that hurt them ultimately, in certain cases, right? Because here's the thing, they won the SEC championship. Despite all that, despite not having the outstanding skill players on the outside, despite not having Carson Beck's best season as a guy who's coming in as arguably the top quarterback and top player who could be the first overall pick right in 25 draft, by all those standards, one of the hardest schedules in the nation, especially having to play a lot of opponents on the road, having to go to Alabama, having to go to Austin, to play University of Texas. Again, the schedule's flipped now. They get to have this matchup at home. They get to have Alabama at home. They have to get University of Texas at home. Um, and so we're looking forward to seeing how they bounce back. I'm not really thrilled with their quarterback position at this point in time, but again, they really did a lot. They were the defending SEC champions, so you got to give them respect there. But back to Miami, I just want to see what they look like. Or do they continue to ride this wave of momentum that started with the Cam Ward era? Or do they dial it back a little bit? Do they kind of become the Miami that they've been, past 10, 15 years, it seems? That's just okay, not really in the title picture, those types of things. Just interested. Um, I don't know if we're going to have any teams that really just disappoint. Um, But we'll see. I don't know. I'm really excited about the college football season. I think there's a lot of unknowns. I think even when you're coming in, right, with Ohio State being the national champion, nobody's talking about them as being this powerhouse. Like nobody's talking about them the way you should be, right? The way you should be talking about a national champion. I think Michigan even got more love coming off a national championship, knowing they lost Coach Harbaugh, knowing the immense amount of talent they lost. I feel like they got more love coming into the year after they won a national title. We know what UGA winning two of the last three national titles or two titles in a 3-year span, and the love and adoration and the oh my God, this team is coming for you mentality, right? Ohio State's not getting that love. And I think it's largely in part because people know if we were in a 14 playoff, hell, if we were in an 18 playoff, you're not getting in. You're not getting in. You had an underwhelming year. If we don't have this 12-team playoff, we are talking about Ohio State having the most expensive roster in college football, having 2 losses, including a loss to a team that won 6 games or 7 games. I'm sorry, 7 or 8 games. That lost everybody. That Michigan lost everybody, and they still dominated you in your stadium. Like it's one thing if Michigan just, they're on the road or they're at home and they got the crowd rallying behind them and all of that. They went into your house and beat you. That's what we're talking about with Ohio State if you don't have a 12-team playoff. And that was my fear. You're you're giving great teams another shot at it. And not just another shot. Like, guys, we were talking about teams losing games on purpose so they could have a lower seed in the easier bracket or a higher seed in the easier bracket, easier path. That's insane. Those are conversations we've never had in college football where teams are losing on purpose, playing the game, playing chess, not checkers. Maybe I'm gonna start my third string quarterback today. So because I know I'm getting to the college football playoffs. I want my starter healthy for that. It's kind of crazy, ain't it? But that's the world we live in. And so, what is the importance of Ohio State, Michigan, other than the bragging rights in the rivalry? What's the importance of some of these marquee games if I can lose 2 and maybe 3 games and still make my case to get to the college football playoff? So that's just kind of where I am with this, right? Like just a little confused, but um I don't understand. Like Ohio State maybe should be talked about more. It's not like they lost a ton in the draft. They still reloaded, right? I think maybe the question mark is at quarterback. You don't know who's leading that charge. Going into last year, we knew Will Howard, a seasoned guy who had a really good career at Kansas State, a guy that wasn't like a superstar, right? But he was going to make the right play. He knew how to command the offense. Um, Maybe that's why they got a little more buzz last year. But again, because there's a level of stability and knowledge within the quarterback room, and so now we don't know who that person is going to be. But it's kind of crazy. I don't even know that's a valid excuse because I've seen other teams that have had that same experience where they've had this championship, they lose a lot of guys, including the starting quarterback, and we're still like, yeah, we know who's next up, or we're looking forward to him. But maybe I could be wrong. But let me make sure I write these down. Now we're getting to the point where I want to uh, give my 12-team college football playoff. So um, let me see. All right. So obviously we know the more times than not, the Power Four champions will be at the bye. Last year it was a bit of a surprise that Boise State got the bye because they were undefeated. So or they had one loss or something like that. So it was kind of crazy. I believe Boise State got the bye, yeah. So um we didn't really know what was going on. But I think we're gonna kind of get back to a little bit of reality. I think the four P4 champions will get the bye. So um I will go there. So I believe that last year Oregon was the overall number one seed. Um, I don't believe that'll happen. So I will say this. Let me do this. I look so unorganized, but I promise you I'm not. Oh, this is written down. I'll give you my predictions for conference title games in the P4, right? SEC, I got Bama versus, y'all ready? Florida. ACC, got Clemson versus Florida State. That's gonna be a really good one. Big Ten, got Michigan. Are you ready for this? Oregon. I mean, look, I didn't respect Oregon last year, but they earned it. They did earn my respect. Their college football playoff didn't go the way they expected, but they earned my respect last year. I like what Dan Lanning's doing with that group, and I think they're gonna be right back in the hunt. But they're gonna have they had Penn State last year. Nobody really cares about Penn State. Like, come on. I think Michigan is one of those blue blood programs that you really, take seriously in this moment against a team like Oregon. Um, in Big 12, I'm gonna go Utah and Arizona State. I think Arizona State gets back to this game, but I think Utah will be much healthier. I love their coaching staff. I love the way they play football. I think they'll be there. Um, I'll have Bama win the SEC. I'll go with Clemson to repeat as ACC champions. I'll go with Michigan to win another Big Ten title. And I'm going to go with Utah for the second year in a row to win the Big 12. And so let's go. I think Michigan ends up being your one seed. I think Bama is your two seed. I think Clemson is your three seed. And I think Utah is your four seed. All right. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right. Now 5 through 12. Um, 5, I will just put who I think 12, I think the group of 5 champion always more times than not is going to get the 12 seed. I'm going to go with Tulane. them getting Retzlaff from BYU, of course, the transfer under the circumstances, you don't like that. But that case has been dropped, but he did violate the honor code at Brigham Young, who had he been a part of that roster, I would have had Utah going against BYU, Holy War, right, for the Big 12 championship. But that's not happening. He transferred to Tulane, who clearly tried to get some. They had an exodus of quarterbacks, right? Their starting quarterback last year ends up transferring to Duke. The backup was about to hit the portal, comes back in, but transitions to the tight end position. They get a couple guys out of the portal. They're not panning out. They end up getting a break with Ratzlaff being available. I think he's going. I think he's a really good quarterback. Again, another guy that's on my radar, right? Of the 2026 prospects. Um, I think what kept Tulane from winning some games was consistency at the quarterback position. I think he can provide that, and I think they can win their conference. So that's what I'm going with to be my Group of Five champion. Um, then I'll go. I'll put Oregon. Oregon at 5. Um, FSU at 6. I'll go Florida. And this is just me rounding out 5 to 12. Like, I guess 5 to 11, I really don't know how that's going to pan out. But I wanted to make sure my 5 conference champions mattered. That's who I got. And then teams wise, like I said, Oregon, Florida State, Florida. I think LSU makes it. And I think Oklahoma somehow makes it. So yeah, I have Texas not making it. I have UGA not making it. I have Ole Miss not making it. And what is that? One, two, three, 4 SEC teams in currently, and I have 2 Big 10, 2 ACC. I will put Penn State and not go USC. So I think it's at that point what it's one, two, three, 4. So yeah, it's 4 Big 10, 4 SEC, 2 ACC, one Big 12, one Group of Five. And this is just setting the stage for, oh, guys, it got really loaded with these 2 conferences. You know what that means? We need to expand. So more Big 12 teams and more ACC teams and more G5 champions. Like, oh my God, a one loss or a undefeated Tulane and a one loss Navy. Why couldn't we have both teams in with the Group of Five? What about Boise State? They were a really good G5 team again. What about UNLV? Really good G5 team again. They couldn't make it because we captured that 12 and they let the big dogs in and they didn't let the little guy in. Guys, they're positioning to do this, right? Because they are not trying to make the same mistake they made last year in regards to looking to make a point and having their point backfire on national television. They can't have that happen again. So they're going to overreact. That's what the committee does. They overreact. They're going to put a bunch of uh, SEC teams in. There's probably going to be some 2 and 3 loss SEC teams in. They're going to put some more Big 10 teams in. Um, so I think the Big 10, what they got 4 last year was Ohio State, Oregon, Indiana, Penn State. Yes, they're going to get 4 in again. Um, SEC got Georgia and Texas last time, so they only got 2 teams in. That's not happening again. So they're getting two more. So it's going to be insane how they make this work. Because but it'll be interesting. But I like the teams that I have in there. Again, I believe in Oregon. I believe um that they're a really good program. They're running things the right way. Um, and so I'm looking forward to seeing them continue to build upon what they did. Like people are like, oh, y'all in the Pac-12, y'all not ready for the big boys. And what they do, they went in, they smacked a few people around, even beat the Ohio State, right? Albeit they were at home. I believe they have to go to Ohio State this year, so that's going to be a totally different game. And Ohio State on a neutral site beat the shit out of them. So you know, a lot to play for, right? Florida State, I do think they have a bounce back year. I mean, last year was just god awful. Like I can't even explain it. I think they have a bounce back year. Florida, I believe they grew up last year. You guys remember last year's episode? I talked about a team that I was looking forward to watching. It was University of Florida. Mentioned that their head coach, who was a big candidate for the LSU job, forgoes that job for Florida, and he just has not stepped up yet. I think last year they did really well. Honestly, if their quarterback situation is a little bit better and not dealing with injuries, especially DJ Lagway, who's expected to be healthy this year, a guy I'm looking for in 2027, by the way, I think they're going to be really, really good. They had a tough schedule, was even just as tough this year, but I believe they're going to win some games they lost last year, and they're going to knock some people off. I think they're going to knock UGA off this year. They're going to knock Tennessee off this year, and I think they're going to knock the University of Texas off this year. So I think those are going to be three games that they win. Where I believe they were 0-3 last year in those games. They're going to be 3-0 in those games, and that's going to catapult and be a catalyst to the season that they have. LSU, look, it's got to be. I mean, not now or never for Brian Kelly, right? I mean, they brought you here to win national championships. They didn't bring you here to win 10 games. They didn't bring you here to win 11 games. They brought you here to get into the college football playoff year in and year out, obviously winning the SEC along the way and winning national titles. That was the thing. It was all this guy got, Notre Dame to the title game and he didn't have the resources and all this type of stuff. LSU could hire me right now with the resources that they have and the recruiting machine that they have. They can hire me right now, and they will win 9 to 10 games a year. I mean, it's just player driven. That's the talent pool, right? That they can do that. You're returning the best passer in the SEC. Um, yes, offensive line has a little bit of struggles. You're expecting the defense to be flying around a little bit more this year, especially with the healthy Harold Perkins Jr. Wide receiver core is one of the best, if not the best, from wide receiver one to maybe wide receiver 5 or 6 in the country, right? They're bringing back some dogs. Now, yes, I have him as a eighth. Basically, I had him at the 18, whatever. But that shows that you're competing, right? That means, hey, you got 9 or 10 games. I don't think they're beating Alabama this year, right? But hell, that Texas A&M game, hell, that could be yours this year. Ole Miss, that could be yours this year, right? But I think they beat Ole Miss. I can't remember, but those are games that continue to be yours. Um, and LSU has to win those this year, and I think they will. I think they'll win enough to where I think they're going to beat Clemson in the first game. I think they've been 0-3 under Brian Kelly because they lost two to Florida State 2 years in a row, and then they lost to USC last year. I think they get off on the right foot this year. They have to, right? You can't lose 4 straight home or 4 straight season openers, Brian Kelly. Like, you got to give your fan base hope. Um, but I got LSU making it. OU, much like Florida last year, I feel like OU grew up. They didn't have the best quarterback situation. They get John Mateer, who's one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. Shout out to my boy C Van on Twitter because he put me on, even though he really didn't put me on because he didn't tell me the whole story. He was telling me about how good this guy was at Washington State and how good he was at spinning that bean, but he didn't tell me the motherfucker can run too. I mean, the kid has it all. When you talk about dual threat, he can do it all. And OU finally has a solidified quarterback solidified quarterback, which is something they have not really had. You can say it was Caleb Williams, but it's not. Say it was Spencer Rattler, but it's not. can say it was Jalen Hurts, but it's not. They haven't had this solidified or this position solidified since Kyler Murray after he replaced Baker Mayfield. So it's been a little minute. I feel like OU has their quarterback. I feel like they grew up. They had a hard schedule. Pretty much the SEC gave them a fuck you schedule, and they gave UT the red carpet. I think OU has grown up from that, where UT has gotten soft. And here's the thing: UT was the prize, so to speak, in this realignment, maybe for financial reasons. But if you're talking about prestige and who's winning the hardware, check the tape, check the records, check the trophy cases. OU was putting belt to ass in the Big 12. UT was just a brand name. But when you're talking about who's winning, who's putting conferences on the national stage, who was doing that for the Big 12 more than Oklahoma was doing? And I think Oklahoma has gotten themselves acclimated to SEC football. They had to play the gauntlet. They had to play some of the big dogs. Like again, you let UT just fucking walk in here and no one play anybody but Georgia, and they got their ass beat twice. OU had to play Alabama. They beat them. OU had to play Tennessee. Almost beat them. OU had to go to the fucking plains and play Auburn. Year one. You got to play against Auburn and Auburn Jesus year one. Oh, I think OU season. So much like Florida, I think their players are built for what it means to be in the SEC and to be able to compete. And so I think they're going to be in the college football playoff. I'm sorry, UT fans, but that's just what it is. Uh, I think Greg Sankey made y'all soft, and I think this year and then next year is going to be about really reintroducing y'all to what SEC football really is like. Penn State returning a lot of guys, returning their two lead backs, returning Drew Allar, of course, the quarterback position. They got two really good wide receivers, got a true freshman, but also got my boy um, from Syracuse who transferred in, who had a really good year last year. I don't think USC is going to do well. I think most of their losses, they had a lead in the fourth quarter. Let's dial that back. Let's get some of these L's, turn them into dubs, and they're going to be good. So that's what I got. I got USC up in there at 11, of course, Tulane at 12. So this is the bracket, right? Let's just say this is the bracket, right? That means Michigan, Bama, Clemson, and Utah all have buys. And I know the one seed played the winner out of 8 and 9. Let me see. So in that case, I would say quarterfinals. If that would be LSU versus OU, I would put Michigan versus LSU. And that one, I think LSU would beat OU. Let me see. And it's 5 and 12 play each other. Oregon and Tulane. Then FSU and USC and Florida and Penn State. So I think 5 and 12 played the 4 seed last year. So I'm gonna say that, and that would be, I would say, Utah versus Oregon. Okay, then that would be Bama and Bama versus the winner of Florida and Penn State, which I would say Penn State, and then Clemson, and forgive me if I got this wrong, y'all. Clemson versus the winner of FSU and USC. And I'm going to go USC on that one. So, Michigan versus LSU. Semis. Yeah, that all looks right. I would go on a neutral site. I will go LSU. Make some of my people in Louisiana happy, right? I will go LSU in that one. I would go Utah over Oregon. Again, I told you I love the way they play the game of football. Oregon is going to have this high-powered offense, but the way Utah can bleed that clock and things like that, I'm going to go with them. I'm going to go Bama over Penn State. And I'm going to go, look, I'm going to go with the fighting Lincoln Rileys in the upset over Clemson. And so that would be a semifinal of LSU versus USC, Bama versus Utah. And I'm going to say my national championship will be Bama versus USC. And I'm taking Bama. There it is. There it is. Set in stone. Set in stones. My Rolling Tide versus the fighting Lincoln Rileys. That's what I got. And that could be good. I think it could be a really good matchup. Like Kane Womack's defense versus the Lincoln Riley offense. That's the chess match. Like that'll be good. Now, I don't know how I feel about having LSU in the semis. Again, I hate to put in there, but I do think they have a roster that they should be in this conversation. And that's kind of why I have them here. Like, there's no reason they shouldn't be in this conversation. And again, unfortunately, we're in a situation where you got a Big Ten team that was the second to last seed. You got an SEC team that was the A seed going against basically your two of your four conference champions in your semis. So I'm sorry, but a Cinderella bites the dust again. Just is what it is. But um, maybe they can fool people after this year into the reason why the 16-team playoff is much better, and we'll get two Cinderellas in. And by Cinderellas, their mindset of Cinderella is a four-loss Power Four team as opposed to a one or two loss G5 team champion. And that's like say Tulane wins their conference. Let's say UNLV wins their conference. Let's say, well, Boise's in the Pac-12 now. So let's say Boise wins the Pac-12. Let's say UNLV wins theirs. The Mountain West. Let's say App State wins the Sun Belt, right? What are we going to do? Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of where we are right now with this 12-team playoff. But maybe they prove me wrong. Maybe some G5 teams run the gauntlet and they force the hand of the committee again. But I just don't see it happening. But yeah, I would like to see Alabama, USC for a national title. I would like to see USC back on that stage. Wouldn't y'all? I don't know. They haven't been on that stage in a long time. It's been 20 years. Shit. God damn, I'm old. Uh, anyways, that's it for today's show. But hey, when you guys watch this episode and comment under here for sure, because I want to have conversations on here, but also when I post it on at Bud Disrespect on Twitter, as well as my main account at Future NBA Gov. Man, let me know what y'all think what 12 playoff teams y'all got. I'm gonna say what's your 12 playoff teams and what's your national title matchup. That's all I need. So if you listen to this, you get to the end, let me know who's your 12, who's your final two. Um, and honestly, you can tell me who you're rolling with as the champion. So, because that's what I'll do. I'll list my 12. I'll list my final two, and I'll list my champion, and we'll go from there. Looking forward to having this conversation with y'all too, on both YouTube and Twitter, because those are always fun, and I appreciate y'all. So look, if there's anything I said that offended anyone, right? It's a good thing. It's an opportunity for me to learn. It's an opportunity for you to teach me. All I ask is that you keep it respectful. Peace.